Today I'm going to be installing CAtuned's rear spare tire carrier. Came wrapped up pretty nicely, lots of plastic and stuff. So let's go ahead and get this thing unwrapped and see what we're dealing with. I'm installing the CAtuned rear spare tire carrier. Mounts on the 180-degree hinges on the driver's side, left-hand side. Initial impressions, it came very well packaged. They sent it in an inexpensive moving blanket and then wrapped with a lot of plastic, so everything survived the trip. Got some hardware and the mounting bracket for the wheel. Weighs at least 25 pounds. It's very solid. Real thick DOM tubing. Looks like good powder coating. All the welds are really nice. So let's go ahead and get started on the installation here. First thing I'm going to do is tape off the area we're going to be drilling holes for the mount. Particular van's got a panel I've made out of wood to add a little storage pocket, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and remove that before I can start drilling any holes. The tire carrier didn't come with instructions that I see. I don't see any on the site. They do have a link to a third-party video which mentions the 27/64 drill bit. Measured the bolts that it came with, and they measure out at about 367 thousandths. So a 27/64 drill bit's pretty big. That leaves a little more room than I want to leave for the moment. I can always step it up. So I've got a 25/64 that measures out at about 388, and a 3/8 bit that measures at 372, 373, so I'm going to start with a 3/8. It's just larger than the bolt. That way I'll have some wiggle room if I want to upsize it, but that'll get me started. I'm going to start with a smaller drill bit and then upsize to the 3/8. And then they've got you, looks like, stepping up the outer layer to a 3/4 inch. I'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to be installing this by myself, and for that reason I need a good way to hold up one end of it without getting crafty with the tie-down straps or anything. Also, don't want the tire carrier mounting hard against the hinges, so I've got some high diameter rubber. It's just real dense, thin, about 1/16 inch thick rubber, and I've drilled some holes in it, and so these bolts are going to go through and then fit very snugly through the rubber. So this is the small bracket they've made to take up the space at the back of the 180-degree hinge. I'll show you that from the back side in a minute. This allows you to mount the bolts through it. So I'm going to place the bolts through their bracket and then through my rubber spacers, and that'll hold the bolts out in place, so I should be able to hold up the rack. And the other reason for doing that is before I drill this, they've got you having it follow the contours of the body line here where the Mercedes logo goes. but that gives me a fair margin of error as far as following that with at the end of the radius or at the beginning of the radius or with a little bit of an overhang, so I could have as much as a 1/4 inch of play there. So I don't want to locate these holes based on where I drill these holes. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rack mounted up a bit, at least mocked up, and then go from there. That way I'll have these holes exactly where I need them and I won't have to oversize them. So at the back of the 180-degree hinge, you can see this bracket that they've made to hold the bolt heads. And it goes through the 2 holes in the 180-degree hinge on the other side. Different shape for the bottom. The piece of rubber I've used will help hold the bolts out, so I can install this by myself and get this mocked up. So let's see if that is going to work for us. So I've got this bolted at all 4 holes over here, and as you can see, even with it snugged, I've got probably about a 1/4 inch of play. So if you had gone ahead and drilled these holes just with the mounting bracket, you may have had to do some grinding to get them right. Kind of just depends. So I've chosen to line up the top tube here with the body line of the van, and with that located, I'll mark the position of my bracket on the tape, and then when I put the rubber seal back on there, I'll be able to tell exactly where I want to drill. It's also come with these 2 3D printed bushings to help you mark a centered hole. I've got the holes drilled. I ran into a problem that you may run into, which is the bushing on the back of the mount. When you drill with the template, actually had a curve on the second layer down here. It's kind of difficult to explain, but you're catching this second layer is where the bolt comes through, and the bushing goes all the way through. So this second layer had a curve going down, and I was hitting the corner of that curve, even though I'm lined up real well with the mounting bracket and the locator here. So I was able to take a punch, a big punch, and just lightly kind of peen the inner surface down so that it'll give me room to put this in and bolt it down. And I'm about to go over all the drilled edges and the area that I had to peen down with some paint right now to coat it up. But in case you run into that, I don't know how the template could be moved any further out to miss this. It would need almost a half an inch to avoid that contour. So that's where we are now. So I've got to fish the nut up inside here to catch the bolt going through. Again, these are 3/8. This is somewhere around 1.5 inches. I've decided to put some Loctite on here because it's definitely something you don't want coming loose and cause some damage to body sheet metal and such. So I'm probably going to put a little bit of masking tape on the outside of this nut to jam it into here so that it's not going to fall out. And that way I can fish it up in there without worrying about dropping it so much. I've got that wedged inside a wrench here, and I'm going to put a little Loctite on it. I've located the lower nut, wasn't too bad. Located the top bolt. You do want to be careful. There is a cable in here that you could hit while you were drilling through, or kind of get jammed in between your bracket or your wrench while you're tightening this down. Cable, I assumed the upper left. I didn't pay attention. Alright, that's not too bad. So it's a pretty easy method. If you're having trouble fishing it in there, I can't fit my hands in there, and it's pretty sharp body metal. So if you just take a wrench, put a little bit of masking tape on there, press the nut into it, it'll hold it in there. You can put some Loctite in, that'll help keep that in as well. And if the tape stays behind, it makes no difference. It's just an door panel. So the fit with the seal and everything looks really nice. I'm pretty happy with that. Everything's snugged up really nicely. It's really a solid bracket. I was a little disappointed with having to beat down the inner layer of sheet metal there. If I had known that going in, I might have felt better about it. But for reference, I used a 12-ounce ball peen and a punch, and I just kind of gently worked around the bottom inside of that sheet metal to move it in, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so. Again, I added some rubber, really high density rubber in between my hinges and the tire carrier. The bottom bolts look to be long enough, while the top bolts with my rubber in there are definitely too short. They're not tightened up completely yet, but I do not believe, unless that inner bracket gives a lot, I'm going to have to order longer bolts. Even if my rubber weren't in there, I don't think these would be as long as I would want them to be comfortable. So, you know, 3/8 black oxide stainless, a couple of bolts, no big deal. Everything else looks really nice. Fit and finish is wonderful. I actually don't have the spare tire I'm going to be putting on here. I have the factory silver. I'm going to order one more black wheel and get some, probably doing some Falcon Wild Peaks on here right now. It's got black steels and some Coopers. This is the finished spare tire carrier. This is a temporary spare. I've got a black wheel inside, and then when I figure out what kind of tires I'm going to get for the rest of this thing, I'll put it on the spare. It turned out nicely. Again, I put some heavy rubber in between 180-degree hinges and the carrier itself. I was actually able to tighten up the factory bolts up top enough to where I didn't need to get longer ones. They look good. Now, the tire does rattle a lot because they've used like a receiver hitch style, which is great because it allows you to adjust the hub here in or out, and depending on the width of your spare. But they have those anti-rattle clamps for receiver hitches, and I'll be grabbing one of those to put on here to keep this from rattling around. It wouldn't be a problem. I don't know if you can hear it inside or not, but I don't like rattles, so I'll be attaching one of those. Other than that, everything looks great. It's a really good fit. 2-inch tubes, real heavy duty. So anyway, that's the finished product.